The twin moons of Zorthia hung heavy in the night sky, casting a pale silver glow over the royal palace. Inside its tall crystal towers, silence spread like a curse. The air that once smelled of blooming light flowers now carried the cold scent of medicine and fear. In the highest chamber, surrounded by shimmering walls of blue light, the alien princess lay weak and fading. Her name was Princess Lyra, the only heir to the Zorthian Empire. Her skin, once glowing with soft violet hues, now looked dull and lifeless. The royal healers surrounded her bed, whispering in panic, their long fingers typing rapidly on glowing panels. Machines beeped and flashed, showing lines that kept falling lower and lower. 20 of the most skilled alien doctors had been called from every corner of the galaxy, each claiming they could save her. But one by one they failed. Outside the golden door stood Eli, a simple human janitor. His job was to clean the endless hallways, polish the crystal floors, and stay invisible. No one ever looked at him. To them he was just a background figure, a worker from a lesser species. But tonight even he could feel something was wrong. He could hear the cries echoing from the princess's chamber. The healers spoke in their strange, clicking language, but Eli understood one thing: the tone of despair was universal. He tightened his grip on the mop handle and looked down the hallway, watching royal guards rush past him. He sighed. Another one dying, he murmured to himself. Another one with all the power but no peace. Back inside, the healers injected glowing liquids into the princess's arm. Her body twitched and a weak gasp escaped her lips. The alien king, tall and terrifying in his dark armor, stood beside her, his 4 eyes filled with helpless rage. "Do something," he roared. "You call yourselves healers, save her." But they could not. The disease, or whatever it was, didn't appear in their scans. It drained her life energy slowly, as if an unseen shadow sat beside her, taking it breath by breath. One healer bowed his head. "Your Majesty, we do not understand the cause." The king's hands shook. "Then find someone who does." Eli continued his work outside, pretending not to listen, but every sound cut deep into his chest. He was a father too. His daughter Anna was back on Earth, waiting for the money he sent every month. She had been sick once, a fever that almost took her life. Eli remembered how helpless he felt then. That same feeling now filled the corridor. The night grew darker. Hours passed. The healers took turns, each trying a different method, each failing. Eli sat on a bench near the chamber, his mop resting beside him. From where he sat, he could see the faint glow under the door. Every few minutes, a healer would come out, shoulders slumped, face pale, and whisper to the guard. No change. Eli's heart ached. If my little girl were in there, I'd never leave her side, he thought. Not even for a second. Then something strange happened. As the last healer left the room for a break, Eli heard a sound, faint and soft like a sob. He turned his head, confused. It wasn't the healers. It came from inside. The door wasn't fully closed. A tiny gap glowed faintly. He hesitated, then leaned closer. Inside, Princess Lyra's voice trembled, weak and broken. I don't want to die alone." Eli froze. No one answered her. The machines hummed coldly. The healers had stepped out, and for the first time the princess was truly alone. Eli's eyes filled with tears. He didn't understand why, but his heart hurt for her. Even across species, pain looked the same. He whispered softly, even though she couldn't hear. "You're not alone, little one." At that moment, one of the healers returned and gave him a cold glare. "Human, leave this area! You are not authorized to stand here." Eli bowed his head and moved away silently. He had learned not to argue. Still, as he walked down the hallway, something about the princess's breathing echoed in his mind. It wasn't like sickness, it was strained, scared, as if something unseen was choking her. He stopped by a window and looked out at the moons again. "They've got all their fancy tech," he muttered, "but sometimes it takes more than that." Far behind him, the chamber lights flickered again. The alien doctors shouted, their voices filled with panic. The machines began to fail one by one. The king's shout shook the palace. "She's fading. Do something." And deep inside the cleaning closet, Eli put down his mop and closed his eyes. For the first time, he wished he could do more than just clean floors. He wished he could help. He didn't know it yet. But soon the fate of a dying princess and an entire empire would rest in the hands of a human janitor and his father's heart. The next morning began with the sound of chaos. Alarms echoed through the shining corridors of the palace. and the scent of burnt circuits filled the air. The alien princess's life monitors had gone dark during the night, and the royal healers were in panic. They surrounded the medical chamber again, shouting at each other in confusion. Eli stood quietly at the far end of the hall, holding his mop and bucket. He wasn't supposed to be there, but his work shift started early, and the corridor outside the princess's room was part of his duty. He moved slowly, cleaning the floor as if nothing was happening. But his ears caught every word, every cry, every desperate command. One of the guards barked at him, "Human! Keep your eyes down. This is royal business." Eli nodded and obeyed, pretending not to care. Years of working among aliens had taught him silence was his best defense. Yet deep inside, his thoughts wouldn't rest. He kept thinking of that soft, frightened voice he had heard last night, the princess whispering, "I don't want to die alone." Those words clung to him like dust that refused to be swept away. He cleaned each tile carefully, one at a time, his reflection trembling in the polished surface. To anyone watching, he was just a janitor. But behind those tired eyes was a man who had known loss, pain, and love. His daughter, Anna, came into his thoughts again. Her small hand in his, her soft laugh, the promise he made before leaving Earth. "Daddy will work hard and come back for you." As he pushed the mop forward, he noticed something strange near the chamber's base panel. A faint green residue shimmered there, a color he hadn't seen before. He frowned, knelt, and touched it lightly. It was sticky, warm, and glowing faintly even under the daylight lamps. He looked around. No one else seemed to notice. He quickly wiped it away before anyone saw him. "Weird," he whispered. "Doesn't look like any of their medicine." At that moment, a group of alien healers rushed past him, arguing. "Her life force is unstable," one shouted. "We replaced her blood filters, still no improvement." "Maybe it's a curse," another hissed. "Something ancient." Eli pretended not to hear, but every word carved deeper curiosity inside him. Something about this illness didn't feel natural. He had worked in the palace long enough to see injuries, fevers, and strange alien diseases, but this felt wrong. When his shift ended, Eli didn't leave. He found a corner near the service vents and sat quietly, eating from his lunchbox, a simple meal of bread and fruit. Through the vent, he could hear the faint hum of machines and the muffled voices of the healers inside. Then silence. For the first time that day, no shouting, no alarms. Only a slow, heavy breathing sound filled the air, mechanical, tired, fading. He didn't know why, but he stood up. His feet moved on their own, step by step, until he stood again outside her door. The guards were distracted, talking to a healer. Eli's hand trembled as he looked at the small gap beneath the door. A dim violet light pulsed there, weak, flickering, almost like a dying heartbeat. He whispered to himself, "She's fighting, isn't she?" Inside, Princess Lyra's body twitched. Her hand reached out weakly toward the edge of the bed where no one stood to hold it. Her lips moved, whispering words no one could hear. And in that lonely silence, Eli felt something deep inside his chest. An ache he hadn't felt since Anna was sick years ago. The sound of a struggling child, the helpless fight for breath. It was the same. That night, Eli couldn't sleep. In his small room below the palace kitchens, he lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly. His hands itched, restless. He kept thinking about the glowing residue he had found, about the fear in the princess's voice. What if it's not a sickness? He thought. What if something's hurting her, something they can't see? The next morning, he returned to his post early again. The healers were still inside the chamber, their faces pale, their movements slower now. Hope was slipping away from them. Eli noticed more of that greenish glow along the hallway near the power conduits. He followed the trail quietly, pretending to mop. It led to a small, dark vent near the princess's room. He leaned closer. A strange hum came from inside, a whispering sound, almost alive. Suddenly, a flash of green light flickered deep within the vent, followed by a faint hiss. Eli jumped back, his heart racing. He didn't understand alien science, but he knew danger when he saw it. Something inside that vent was wrong. He looked toward the princess's door again. The guards stood stiff, unaware of what was hiding just a few feet away. Eli's instinct screamed that whatever was in that vent had something to do with her illness. But he said nothing. He was just a janitor. Who would believe him? As he walked away, he glanced one last time at the glowing vent. His reflection in the metal looked back at him, tired, small, human. Yet somewhere deep behind those eyes a spark had awakened. He whispered under his breath, "If they can't save her, maybe I can." And for the first time, the silent janitor made a silent promise to himself that he wouldn't walk away again. The night air around the royal palace of Zorthia was colder than usual. Stars glittered through the translucent ceiling, casting quiet silver shadows across the polished floors. Most of the palace slept, but Eli couldn't. The human janitor sat alone in the service corridor, staring at his reflection in a metal panel. His hands trembled slightly. He had seen that green glow again earlier, only this time it seemed to move. He rubbed his face, whispering to himself, "You're just imagining things. Eli, you're tired, that's all." But deep down, he knew it wasn't his imagination. Something alive was in that vent, something that didn't belong there, and the princess's health had worsened the moment the glow appeared. He glanced toward the royal wing. Guards patrolled lazily now, assuming the princess wouldn't survive till morning. The healers were resting, exhausted after endless failures. The king had shut himself in his war chamber, unable to face what was coming. The palace, usually bright and full of life, had gone silent, except for the slow hum of dying machines. Eli's chest felt heavy. He had cleaned hospitals back on Earth. He had seen the moment when people gave up hope. That same stillness was in the air now. But the difference was, no one was trying to see beyond the surface. Everyone trusted their technology, their fancy scanners, their glowing medicines. No one was using their eyes or their heart. He looked again toward the vent that had glowed before. It was quiet now, but something about it made his skin crawl. He took a deep breath, grabbed his small cleaning lamp, and whispered, "Just one look, then I'll leave." He moved silently through the corridor. His old boots made no sound on the glass floor. As he neared the princess's chamber, he saw the two guards standing at their posts, half asleep. The glowing royal sigil above the door shimmered weakly, as if even the palace's energy was dying along with her. Eli ducked into a side passage that connected to the maintenance ducts. He had cleaned them many times before, crawling through the narrow tunnels with only his lamp for light. Tonight, those tunnels would take him somewhere forbidden, the other side of the princess's room. The air inside was thick with dust and metal. As he crawled through the duct, his lamp flickered. The faint humming sound grew louder. He stopped and listened. It wasn't a machine, it was breathing. Slow, heavy, wet. Eli's pulse quickened. He followed the sound until the duct opened into a small vent overlooking the princess's chamber. Carefully, he peered through the metal grid. There she was, Princess Lyra, lying still on her glowing bed. Tubes and wires connected her to strange machines, their lights flickering weakly. Her violet skin looked almost gray now. The healers were gone, and the only sound came from her shallow breathing. Then Eli saw it. Under the bed, hidden in shadow, something moved. It was small, about the size of a cat, but covered in pulsing green veins. It clung to the underside of the bed like a living patch of slime, feeding through one of the cables that ran directly to the princess's chest monitor. Every time the machine beeped, the creature pulsed brighter. Eli's mouth went dry. It wasn't a sickness, it was a parasite, a living thing stealing her life energy. He stared in horror. The healer's scanners couldn't detect it because it blended with the energy signature of the palace systems. Only his human eyes, untrained but honest, could see it. His first instinct was to crawl back and tell someone. But then he remembered what would happen. No one believed humans in this palace. If he told the guards, they'd laugh or punish him for speaking out of turn. He clenched his fists. "No one's going to believe a janitor," he muttered. "So I'll handle it myself." Eli crawled out of the vent quietly and moved down the maintenance tunnel until he found an old service door that led into the princess's chamber. It was locked with alien glyphs glowing faintly. He had no key, but years of working here had taught him a few tricks. He pulled out his access card, pressed it against the panel, and waited. The door blinked red once, twice, then turned green. He stepped inside. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the machines. The air felt colder, heavier, as if the creature's presence poisoned it. Eli's boots made soft echoes on the crystal floor. He could see the princess's face clearly now, peaceful but pale as snow. Her hand rested near the edge of the bed, fingers trembling weakly. Eli whispered softly, "Don't worry, princess. I'll help you." Just hold on. He moved around the bed, crouched, and lifted the edge of the blanket. The green light flared. The creature hissed silently, its body twitching as it sensed him. Its skin rippled like jelly, covered in sharp veins that pulsed with stolen energy. Eli's heart pounded. He grabbed the only thing he had, a long metal mop handle, and held it like a spear. The creature's glow brightened, reacting to his movement. For a moment, everything went still. Then, with a burst of courage, Eli slammed the pole down. A shrill, inhuman scream filled the room. The parasite writhed violently, its body melting into mist and light. The machines went wild, alarms blaring, lights flashing red. Guards shouted outside, boots pounding toward the door. Eli dropped the mop and stumbled back, breathing hard. He looked up at the princess, her body shivered, and for the first time her chest rose in a full, deep breath. Her eyes fluttered open. Bright violet light filled the room as the alien princess looked at him with disbelief and confusion. For a moment Eli froze. Time itself seemed to stop. Then the doors burst open and guards rushed in, pointing their weapons at him. "Human, step away from the princess." Eli raised his hands slowly, heart still pounding, as the princess whispered weakly, "Wait, don't hurt him." But her voice was too faint, drowned by the chaos. The guards surrounded him. Machines still flashed red. And as they dragged Eli away, the creature's last green spark vanished into thin air. He didn't know it yet, but that single act, born of instinct and courage, had changed everything. The heavy steel doors of the royal chamber slammed shut behind Eli as guards dragged him out by the arms. His boots scraped against the floor, leaving faint streaks of dirt on the polished crystal tiles. The alien voices around him were sharp, echoing through the vast hallway filled with anger and disbelief. "Arrest the human," shouted one of the guards, his armor glowing blue with fury. "He touched the princess. He might have killed her." Eli didn't fight back. His heart was pounding too fast to speak. His mind replayed what had just happened, the glowing creature, the piercing scream, and then the princess breathing again. He had seen her open her eyes. For a brief moment she was alive. That couldn't be a lie, he tried to speak. "Wait, she's alive! I saw her breathe." But the guards didn't care. One of them struck him in the stomach with the butt of his weapon, forcing him to his knees. "Silence, human. You will explain yourself before the king." They bound his wrists with glowing cuffs that burned against his skin. As they pulled him down the hall, healers rushed past in the opposite direction, running toward the princess's room. Their white robes trailed light behind them as they disappeared into the chamber. Eli's heart ached. "Please," he whispered, "just check her first." The guards threw him into a holding cell at the far end of the corridor. The door locked with a hiss, sealing him inside. The air was cold. The walls shimmered faintly, and the only sound was his heavy breathing. Minutes passed, then hours. He sat quietly on the floor, staring at his burned wrists. His thoughts wandered back to Earth, to Anna. He had promised her he'd come home. Now he didn't even know if he'd live to see another sunrise. But somewhere in the distance, faint echoes reached him. The alarms had stopped. The shouting had turned to whispers. Something had changed. Eli stood and pressed his ear against the shimmering wall. He couldn't hear much, only fragments of alien speech. Then footsteps approached. The door slid open and a figure stepped in. It was the head healer, his long eyes glowing faintly. The healer looked at him with a mixture of confusion and disbelief. "What did you do, human?" he asked quietly. Eli blinked. I just saw something under her bed. It was alive. It was hurting her." The healer's expression hardened. "You are not a doctor. You are not authorized to touch royal property. Yet," he paused, almost hesitant. "The princess, she's breathing again. Her color has returned." Eli's heart leaped. "She's alive?" The healer nodded slowly. "Barely, but her vitals have stabilized for the first time in 10 days. Eli felt his knees weaken. Relief and exhaustion hit him all at once. He leaned against the cold wall, closing his eyes. "Thank God," he whispered. "Thank God." But the healer's tone changed, cold and sharp. "Do not celebrate yet. The king believes you may have used forbidden technology or witchcraft. You will remain imprisoned until the truth is known." Eli sighed. He had expected that. Humans in the galaxy were tolerated, not trusted. To them, he was just a worker from a primitive world, useful for cleaning, not for saving lives. After the healer left, Eli sat in silence again, his thoughts heavy but calm. He had done what he could. If he had to die for it, at least the princess would live. Then suddenly the corridor lights flickered. A soft hum filled the air, followed by the sound of gentle footsteps. Eli looked up. Through the small window in the cell door he saw her, Princess Lyra. She was pale but standing, supported by two healers. Her eyes, bright and glowing violet, scanned the hall. When she saw him, she stopped. The guards around her hesitated, unsure of what to do. "Open the cell," she said softly. Her voice was weak but commanding. The guards exchanged glances. "Your Highness, that is not allowed." "I said open it," she repeated. Reluctantly, one of them pressed the panel. The door slid open with a hiss. Eli stood, stunned, as the alien princess slowly stepped closer. Her gaze met his, and for a moment the entire corridor seemed to fade away. "You," she whispered. "You saved me." Eli lowered his head. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," she said, shaking her head faintly. "Not anyone. The healers didn't see it. My father didn't, but you did." The guard stood frozen, confused and uneasy. The princess turned to them. "Release him, now!" They hesitated again, but her tone turned sharp. "That's an order." Eli's cuffs vanished in a blink, releasing his wrists. He rubbed the sore marks, unsure what to say. The princess gave a weak smile. "You shouldn't have been there, human. But if you hadn't been, I'd be gone." Eli looked at her carefully. She seemed fragile, yet her presence filled the hall with quiet strength. "I only did what felt right," he said softly. "Sometimes you don't need to be a doctor to save someone. You just need to care." Her eyes softened. "Humans, you are strange creatures," she said with a faint laugh. For the first time in weeks, the palace halls carried the sound of laughter instead of despair. But somewhere deep beneath the palace, in the dark vents where Eli had crawled before, a faint flicker of green light pulsed once, then disappeared into the shadows. Neither of them noticed it. But soon they would learn. The creature Eli destroyed was not alone. The royal throne room of Zorthia blazed with fury and golden light. The air trembled with anger, and the king's 4 eyes glowed bright red. Around him stood rows of alien guards, scientists, and healers, all trembling under his voice. At the center of the hall on his knees was Eli, the human janitor who had dared to enter the forbidden royal chamber. "Explain yourself, human," the king thundered. His voice echoed through the crystal walls, shaking the air. "You broke into my daughter's chamber. You touched her sacred body. Tell me, what magic did you use?" Eli looked up slowly, his face tired but calm. "It wasn't magic," he said softly. "There was something alive under her bed. It was feeding on her. I just removed it." A wave of murmurs filled the hall. The royal healers exchanged confused glances. The head healer stepped forward, his long silver robes glowing faintly. "Your Majesty, we have confirmed traces of a parasitic energy beneath the royal bed. The human story may be true." The king slammed his staff to the ground. "May be true? You are telling me that 20 trained healers could not detect what a janitor from Earth could see?" The healer bowed his head in shame. "Our instruments cannot perceive that kind of energy. It seems to react only to human senses." The room went silent. Everyone turned to stare at Eli. The human janitor shifted uncomfortably under their gazes. He was dressed in simple gray work clothes, hands still scarred from the cuffs. He didn't look like a hero. He looked like someone who had no place standing in front of a king. But the truth had begun to whisper its way through the court. The princess was alive because of him. Princess Lyra entered the chamber then, supported by her attendants. The moment she appeared, everyone fell silent and bowed. Her color had returned, her violet glow brighter than ever. She still looked fragile, but her eyes shone with quiet strength. She stepped forward, ignoring the guards who tried to stop her, and faced her father. "He saved my life," she said softly but firmly. "If it weren't for him, I would be dead." The king turned to her, his expression breaking between relief and pride. "My daughter." "You are awake?" "I am," she said, "because this human saw what none of us did." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Some aliens bowed their heads in disbelief. Others whispered among themselves. The king stared at Eli, struggling to understand. "You mean to tell me," he said slowly, "that this human, this janitor, did what the greatest minds of Zorthia could not?" "Yes," the princess said. "He saw the truth because he looked with his heart, not just his eyes." Eli's throat tightened. He hadn't expected gratitude, least of all from a princess. He simply lowered his head and whispered, "I just did what any father would do." The king walked toward him, each step heavy. He stopped in front of Eli, towering over him. The guards tensed, waiting for the order to strike. But the king's voice, when he finally spoke, was softer than before. "You risked your life for someone not of your kind," he said. "Why?" Eli looked up. "Because I know what it feels like to lose someone. I couldn't let another father go through that." The hall fell silent. Even the guards lowered their weapons slightly. For a long moment, the alien king studied the human's face, the lines of exhaustion, the eyes filled with truth. Then he turned to the healers. "Study that parasite," he commanded. "Find out where it came from." The healers bowed and hurried away. The king faced Eli again. "You are still guilty of breaking the law," he said firmly. "But," he paused, the faintest hint of respect in his tone, "you have also saved my bloodline. For that, your life is spared." Eli nodded quietly. "That's all I ask, sir." But the princess stepped forward again. "That's not enough," she said. "He deserves more than life. He deserves honor." The hall buzzed with shock. Never before had a human been praised in the royal court. The king hesitated. "Honor for a janitor?" Lyra smiled faintly.
"Titles do not make a hero, father."
"Actions do." The king looked at her, then at Eli, then sighed deeply. "Very well," he said finally. "From this day forward you will be known as Eli of Zorthia, guardian of the crown." Eli blinked. "Guardian? But You are no longer just anything," the princess interrupted. "You're the man who saved a world." The crowd bowed low. For the first time, an earth-born human stood honored in an alien empire. As the king raised his staff, the chamber filled with a beam of golden light that wrapped around Eli like a warm flame. It shimmered, leaving a mark of the royal seal on his chest. The ceremony ended, but whispers spread through every corner of Zorthia, the human janitor who defied the impossible. Eli walked out of the throne room quietly, still overwhelmed. The princess watched him go, a faint smile on her face. But as he disappeared down the corridor, a shadow flickered near the ceiling, green and faint, like smoke curling from a dying fire. It slithered through a vent and vanished into the darkness. The threat wasn't over. The truth was still deeper than anyone knew. The laboratories of Zorthia were unlike anything Eli had ever seen. Endless glass tubes glowed with strange colors, filled with floating fragments of light and living energy. Alien scientists moved swiftly between them, their slender fingers tapping at floating screens, their eyes scanning streams of data that danced like rivers of light. In the center of the lab lay a containment chamber. Inside it pulsed the faint remains of the creature Eli had destroyed. What was left of the parasite glowed dim green, its jelly-like body twitching faintly as if it still lived. The scientists stood around it in silence, fear and curiosity mixing in their expressions. Princess Lyra stood behind the observation glass with Eli beside her. Though still weak, she had insisted on seeing the investigation herself. "That thing," she whispered, her voice low. "It was inside my room for days. I could feel it. It whispered when I slept." Eli frowned. "Whispered?" She nodded slowly. "I thought it was my dreams. But it was real. It was feeding." The lead scientist turned toward them, his tone uneasy. "Your Highness, the human was correct. The creature is not biological, it is energy-based. It consumes life force directly, bypassing physical matter. That is why our instruments failed. It hides inside energy waves." Eli crossed his arms. "So it's like a parasite made of light?" "Exactly," the scientist replied. "But there's more. It reacts violently to human biofrequency. When the human attacked, the creature overloaded and died instantly." The princess looked at Eli in surprise. "You mean only he could kill it?" "Yes," said the scientist. "It seems the human nervous system carries an energy field that the creature cannot survive in. To it, humans are poison." Eli blinked. "Poison? Well, that's a first." The scientist didn't laugh. "We have analyzed its origin. It doesn't belong to our world or any known colony. It came through the outer barrier of space. Something sent it here." The room fell silent. Lyra's eyes widened slightly. "Sent? You mean this wasn't an accident?" The scientist bowed his head. "No, Your Highness. It was deliberate. A weapon." Eli's chest tightened. "Someone tried to assassinate you." The air in the lab grew heavy. The princess turned toward the glass, her reflection glowing faintly in the green light. "But who?" she whispered. "And why?" The scientist looked uneasy. That we do not yet know. But it was not alone. We detected faint traces of the same energy signature deep beneath the palace. Eli's heart skipped. Beneath? Yes, in the maintenance tunnels. It's dormant. For now. Eli and the princess exchanged a glance. The memories of that glowing vent flashed in his mind, the one he had seen before. He had thought it was gone. He was wrong. Lyra stepped back from the glass, her voice firm despite her weakness. Then we must destroy it before it wakes. The scientist hesitated. We cannot. The tunnels are shielded. No energy weapon will work there. Eli took a deep breath. Then let me go. The scientist blinked. You? A human janitor? Eli shrugged. Seems like I've got the right kind of blood for the job. Lyra turned to him, her voice low. You've done enough, Eli. My father would never allow, he interrupted gently. Princess, that thing isn't done. It'll come for you again. I can't just walk away knowing that. Her eyes softened. For a moment she saw not a janitor but a man who had risked everything without being asked. A man who fought not because of duty but because of heart. She nodded slowly. Then I'm going with you. Eli shook his head. No, you need to rest, but the princess lifted her chin. Zorthia will not let its savior fight alone. Before he could argue, the lab door opened with a hiss. The king entered, his cloak flowing behind him, his expression stern. You will both do nothing, he said. This matter will be handled by my soldiers. Eli bowed slightly. With respect, Your Majesty, your soldiers can't even see it. By the time they find it, it'll already have fed again. The king glared at him. You presume too much, human. Maybe, Eli said quietly. But I was right once. The king fell silent. For a moment, the proud ruler of Zorthia stood face to face with the janitor who had saved his child. He could see the truth in Eli's eyes. There was no arrogance there, only resolve. Finally, the king sighed. Very well. You will lead a small team. If you fail, the fault is yours alone. Eli nodded. That's fine by me. As the guards prepared the passage to the tunnels, Lyra placed a glowing crystal in Eli's hand. This will protect you from its energy. It's bound to my life force. As long as it glows, I'm safe. If it fades, then I'm in danger again. Eli looked at her, his rough hands closing around the warm light. I'll make sure it keeps glowing, she smiled faintly. Be careful, human. The dark has many eyes, he gave a small grin. And I've got a good mop. She laughed softly, the sound breaking the tension in the lab. But as Eli turned toward the tunnels, that faint laughter faded behind him, replaced by the hum of machines and the distant, sickly pulse of green light awakening below. The truth had been revealed, but the real battle was just beginning. The tunnels beneath the royal palace of Zorthia were old, built long before even the king's ancestors ruled. The walls were carved from dark stone that shimmered faintly with energy veins, and every step echoed like thunder in the narrow silence. Eli walked ahead, his cleaning lamp in one hand and the princess's glowing crystal in the other. Behind him followed two alien guards, nervous and unsure. The deeper they went, the dimmer the crystal's light became. The air grew colder, thicker, almost alive. Each breath felt heavy, and the sound of faint whispering brushed against their ears. It wasn't just wind, it was language. Words that weren't meant for human ears. Eli stopped, holding up the lamp. The ground beneath them pulsed with faint green lines like veins spreading through stone. It's here, he whispered. One of the guards swallowed hard. What is this place? Something old, Eli said quietly. And something angry. They reached a massive chamber at the tunnel's end. The walls pulsed softly with green light. In the center of the room floated a cocoon of energy, larger than a person, glowing and shifting like a storm trapped in glass. The parasite's main nest, the creature Eli had destroyed earlier, had only been a fragment, a scout. This was the core. The guards raised their weapons, but the parasite reacted before they could fire. The light exploded outward, throwing them against the wall. Eli fell to the ground, shielding his eyes from the blinding glow. When he looked up, the energy mass had formed a shape, tall, fluid, terrifying. It looked like a shadow made of fire and mist, its eyes bright green suns. It spoke, not with sound but straight into their minds. Foolish human, you should have left her to die. Eli's head throbbed in pain, but he forced himself to stand. You'd talk too much for a pile of slime. The creature hissed, the sound echoing in his skull. The green light surged toward him, wrapping around his legs and arms. It burned like acid, but Eli held onto the crystal with both hands. Its warmth spread through him like sunlight, and the green tendrils recoiled in pain. The princess's gift was working. He tightened his grip. You fed on her because she was kind. You thought kindness was weakness. You were wrong. The creature's voice turned sharp. Humans do not belong among the stars. Eli grinned through the pain. Then you've never met a janitor with bills to pay. He lunged forward, swinging his metal lamp straight into the creature's glowing core. The lamp shattered on impact, sending a burst of light through the chamber. The crystal in his hand flared, forming a shield around him. The parasite screamed, a sound that tore through the air like thunder. The walls shook, stones falling from the ceiling. The guard struggled to stand, shouting something Eli couldn't hear. The light consumed everything for a moment. Green, white, blinding. Then silence. When Eli opened his eyes, the chamber was still. The green glow had vanished. The air smelled clean for the first time. The cocoon was gone, burned away to nothing but dust. Eli fell to his knees, exhausted. The crystal in his palm had dimmed to a soft glow. He smiled weakly. That's it, princess. It's over. The guards rushed to him, helping him to his feet. The energy readings are gone, one said. You destroyed it. Eli nodded slowly, his body trembling. Good. Let's go home. When they returned to the palace, the halls were filled with waiting faces. Scientists, guards, servants, all holding their breath. The moment they saw Eli alive, cheers erupted through the corridors. Princess Lyra ran forward, her violet eyes bright with relief. You did it, she cried. Eli smiled tiredly. I almost got vaporized in the process, but yeah, it's done. The king stepped forward, his expression softer than ever before. You have saved not just my daughter, but my kingdom, he said. No words can repay what you've done. Eli shook his head. You don't have to repay me. I just did what I had to. The princess, however, reached into her robe and pulled out a small orb, a sphere of clear crystal that pulsed gently with light. Then let me repay you my way, she said. This is the heart of Zorthia. It can heal any living being, no matter how wounded or sick. My ancestors guarded it for centuries. Now it belongs to you. Eli stared at it, speechless. I can't take that. You can, Lyra said softly. And you must. You told me you had a daughter waiting for you. Use it to make sure she never suffers again. For the first time in years, tears welled in Eli's eyes. He took the orb carefully, feeling its warmth spread through his chest. Thank you, he whispered. The king stepped closer and placed a heavy hand on his shoulder. Zorthia will forever honor your name, Eli of Earth. You came to us as a janitor, but you leave as a savior. Eli smiled faintly. Guess I'll have to put that on my resume. Laughter echoed through the throne hall, real laughter, full of life. The light returned to the palace. The healers stood in awe, the soldiers saluted, and the princess bowed deeply. That night, when Eli finally prepared to leave for Earth, the princess met him at the spaceport. Will we ever see you again? She asked. He smiled. Maybe, if you ever need someone to clean up another mess. As the ship rose into the starry sky, the princess watched the trail of light fade into the heavens. Beside her, her father spoke quietly. Strange creatures, these humans. Lyra smiled. Strange, but full of light. Far across the galaxy, Eli sat by the window of his transport, holding the glowing orb close. For the first time, he felt peace. Soon he'd see Anna again, and for once he'd be bringing home more than money. He'd be bringing hope. And somewhere in the endless night between stars, a single thought echoed. Even in the darkest corners of the universe, the light of a human heart could still change everything.